When is your employer required to file an H-1B amendment for you if you are on an H-1B visa? I'm Sam Shihab.
I am Brian Burke.
And we're from the law firm of Sam Shihab and Associates. We practice immigration law throughout the U.S. and throughout the world. And Brian, we're going to talk about H-1B amendments. A lot of questions on this topic.
Yeah.
And there are two scenarios in which H-1B must be amended. What are they?
So there is a change in work site location outside of the MSA that you're approved to work in, and another, which is sort of catch-all, any material major change in the conditions of your work.
Okay, excellent. So let's take the first one, the change in the work location. So when the H-1B petition is filed, there is a work location assigned to that petition that your employer telling the government where you're going to be working in the U.S. And that attaches to a wage number, the salary that you're being paid.
Yeah.
For example, if you're working in California, the wage is higher. If you work in other areas, the wage may be lower.
Sure.
Now, when you move outside the MSA,
The defined work area, yeah.
the Metropolitan Statistical Area, which is a boundaries of multiple counties or one county where you're working.
Usually grouped around like a major city, for example.
Yes, and that is published by the census.gov. You can look up the boundaries of that MSA where you are working. If you cross that boundary,
That is it. That is when you're going to require, generally speaking, an H-1B amendment.
So you said generally speaking, why?
Yeah, because there's some exceptions here. One, there's a reasonable commuting distance exception. So, if you moved 1 mile outside of that MSA, your work site, you're still in reasonable commuting distance of that MSA. And there you go. You may not need an H-1B.
And the test is not 1 mile; it's what's reasonable. So
Yeah.
let's assume, in big cities, maybe the travel is a little bit more than that, 8 mile, 9 miles. But everybody does that commute.
Sure.
Then that's reasonable,
Yeah.
and you may not be required to file an H-1B amendment based on that work location. And that's on a case-by-case basis and needs to be analyzed based on where you're working and where you're moving to.
Sure.
On a specific scenario.
Yeah.
So that's the first requirement.
Yeah.
What's the second one?
It's material change. It's the possibly anything. And what a material change is, material means major. And so basically any material or major change in the terms and conditions of your H-1B employment, that could require an amendment with USCIS. And so let's talk examples, I guess.
Yeah, but to kind of, before we get into the examples, to highlight, really the big areas is really the salary and the job duties. I mean, there could be another area, but very rarely.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the areas. A change in the salary or a change in the job description. Let's throw in an example.
Yeah, so you have an approved H-1B that says you're going to be a software developer. And let's say you get a couple people put under you. You have supervisory duties. Does that require an H-1B amendment, Sam?
If the supervisory duties are not in my job description, and now I have become a supervisor, that requires an H-1B amendment.
Yeah, it's worth noting that when your H-1B case is filed, you're sort of given a level of your occupation, and if you're given a wage and a level that says, no supervisory duties, and then you get them, the government might think that you should be being paid more, and that was the reason, again, be filing an H-1B amendment. How about changes in salary?
Yeah, changes in salary obviously depends on how much. You get a 2%, 3% salary change. That's
normal in the course of business.
That's not material. 4% is not material. You get 10% or more, I think that's material.
Yeah, I mean, a major change in income is also going to suggest a potential change in your job duties. So
Suggest that, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's something where, conservative practice would be to file an H-1B amendment.
Absolutely. Duties and responsibilities of your job.
Yeah, so...
other than, supervisory is one of them, but let's assume now they're throwing in other things that was not listed in the original job description.
So, in your H-1B case, you are sort of locked into a general job description, also a code, basically. If you walk outside that, and really, like you said, anything that's not really inside your job description, it's something worth considering whether an H-1B amendment is required.
Yeah. What about an occupation change?
What
is an occupation change?
Well, so in these LCAs that you file with the Department of Labor for your H-1B cases, you are locked into a code. If there's one that I know, it's 151252 software developers. That says, you're doing something in the realm of software development. But if they wanted to shift you to quality assurance, that's a different job code. And I think in that scenario, that's something which pretty clearly requires an H-1B amendment.
But obviously, it's not only the title, but also the job description and the duties that really define that title.
Sure, yeah. Whether if it's not really a change, it's not really a change.
The truth of the matter is a job change, a material job change is known. It's not something that, oh, I did not know I'm changed my job. It is something that if you are in that occupation, you know that your job has changed. And that's when you want to bring up to your HR that, hey, I'm on an H-1B. I may need an H-1B amendment. That needs to be looked into it.
Yeah, really bringing it all together, people always want to know, how can you be sure? And the answer is, there's no bell or siren that goes off anytime, you've had a material change. The government doesn't tap you on the shoulder and say, material change, it's your obligation to tell them. It's your employer's obligation. So I think, it's always worthwhile to be a little bit thoughtful and a little bit conservative. And if you think there's a change, bring it up. And, better safe than sorry, but then be told later by the government that, oh, you should have filed an amendment for that.
And that's the rules on H-1B amendments. Thank you guys. Have a great day.